But I think this is a major question when we say about how do you deal with with people who don't keep all the halachot. And this is an important point. I think is a large difference between our Minhagim and our rabbis, the way they dealt with the community, as opposed to the rabbis, let's say, from Eastern Europe or from Europe itself. The difference is that in our tradition, everyone agrees that there is one tradition. No one says that there is more than one tradition. The person who keeps more, or person who keeps less, everyone agrees there's only one tradition. You can't come out and start a new tradition and say, well, you get 10 Jews together and say, well, this is Judaism. Just because you get 10 Jews together and they decide on something doesn't make it Judaism. It makes the 10 Jews decided that they want to do this. No, everyone agrees to that. So the Chachamim always dealt with the people as basically, everyone goes along with the tradition, some more and some less. However, in other societies, they didn't deal with it that way. They ostracized people who didn't keep it fully. And because of that forced them... The Ashkenazim, yeah. So that forced them, very often, to go and create a new ideology in order to say what we're doing is right. So that's why they got this whole idea. Right. If you go to California, it'll be, it's common for them to, this is Judaism. You ask a Reform Jew or a conservative Jew, what is Judaism to them? So they say Judaism is you go on Rosh Hashanah to synagogue, you go to Yizkor on Yom Kippur, and that's Judaism. Anything else is not. Day on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is half a day. If you're on a fast, you don't have to fast. That is Judaism. And Brit Milah, that's at least they have that.
And you break the fast in a Chinese restaurant.
So that's very hard to fight with, because here you're saying you're transferring, you're changing Judaism and putting in something else. That is very difficult. Now you should know a lot of the conservatives have perhaps the hardest foot to stand on ideologically. Why? Because they, like the traditional conservatives, like to keep as many laws as possible. However, they deny the fact that our tradition comes from one source, comes from God.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They don't believe in Torah min hashamayim. They don't believe that the Torah is holy. It's man-made.
I thought Reform.
No. Reform are even more to the left. Yeah.
There's left-wing conservative and there's right-wing conservative.
Right-wing conservative.
I'm talking about real conservative from JTS, from Jewish Theological Seminary.
Some left-wing don't.
That is the
right-wing beliefs.
They believe in different.
They themselves have two wings.
No, within conservative Judaism, they believe in different books. They believe that the Torah is made up of different books put together by man. However, the whole problem with their philosophy is, amongst the youth, is that they see a contradiction here. Here, if we say that the Torah is man-made, and our tradition just comes because of development from the rabbis, so what does it mean to me? Why am I keeping it? Why should I keep the laws? Why should I be involved in the Jewish people at all? So the youth are having now. I've been involved in youth in America, in Israel, that they have that problem. The Reform have it easier. They say, you're not obligated. They came out with a new 10 commandments, whatever they are, and they say these are your commandments. They're usually social. They're all social laws that a person is obligated himself because he feels it's more of a humanistic type of philosophy. It's not Judaic in the fact that the halachot run your life. But the conservative ones, they are ideologically the hardest. They have the hardest time, and because of that, actually, is the most left-wing group of Jewish tradition is Reconstructionists. I had a rabbi once in California who was a Reconstructionist.
They're more left-wing than...
They're more left-wing. They came out of conservative, but it's the ideological end of their philosophy.
Come in.
How are you?
Yeah, we'll start. Their philosophy is that even the rabbis themselves, they don't believe in God. That's the Reconstructionists, yeah. Because it came out of conservative Judaism. They don't believe in God. I had a rabbi there. in California. He didn't.
No, that's not the philosophy of the. It could be the philosophy.
No, Reconstructionists. Reconstructionists were an offshoot of conservative
What
Judaism.
is their purpose? What, just cultural Judaism?
That's right, cultural Judaism.
So it's better to do that than not to believe at all?
What is not? They don't believe
Like
it.
it's scientific?
They don't believe in God.
They don't believe in God.
It's like scientific.
I'm sure that science is a strong factor in their belief. But you see that some things which seem closer, in the end they can put people further away when they see that their own philosophy it doesn't make sense. So the ultimate end of their philosophy will end up very far away. So that's why small differences can end up to be large differences after a while. Okay, we'll start with Pirkei Avot. No, you want to start?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, introduce.
No, I'm saying.
Okay, we're going to introduce Moshe Rabbeinu. If we'll give him an introduction. Starring, right? Charlton Heston.
Reggie loves it.
Masechet Avot is a group of Mishnayot. The Mishnayot, what are the Mishnayot? They were written down in the year, about the year 200 by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. They found that our tradition, which had been handed down from word of mouth for over 1,500 years, was in great danger of being lost. Lost to what? Lost to arguments. Why is it lost to arguments? Because people they were told their tradition, sometimes they forgot it, a little bit of it, sometimes they misquoted it. So it was coming out that you had a lot of different factions, and they all felt that they had the tradition. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi got together with the Chachamim, with the wise men at the time, and he sat down and he wrote down the Mishnayot. So he wrote down in shorthand the basic halachot and the tradition that they got from Sinai. Now, within this tradition is interesting. What did he write? One of the Masechtot that he wrote, one of the Mishnayot was Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot was the ethics of the fathers. This he wrote because, like we've talked about before, a major part of Judaism, if not the main part, the major part, the basis of Judaism is a person's character and a person's the way he deals in life. We said, like the Mishnah says, "Im en Torah in derech eretz." If a person does not have this derech eretz, we say can be translated as work, and derech eretz can be translated as morality or interpersonal relationships. If you don't have Torah, if you don't really understand Torah, then you cannot have ethics. Ve'im en derech eretz en Torah. That if you don't have derech eretz, it's kadma Torah. That you have to have morality in order to have the Torah. So that is why Masechet Avot comes in. That's why he wrote it down. Now, would you like to? Okay. Moshe Kibel. So he starts like this: Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah from Sinai. This is the only time in the Mishnayot that he mentions Moshe Rabbeinu, that he mentions that Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. When he talks about the other halachot, let's say about you have to read Kiryat Shema, you have to pray, or other different halachot about marriage, about divorce, about korbanot, about sacrifices, he doesn't mention the fact of the tradition. Here in this Masechet, he mentions the tradition, that Moses received the Torah from Sinai, and he gave it over to Yoshua, and Yoshua gave it over to the elders, and the elders gave it over to the prophets, and they gave it over to other people. The oral tradition. Right. So here he mentions it, in Masechet Avot he mentions it. Our rabbis comment on the fact, why did he mention it here? This is the only place where he mentions the tradition that it was passed down, who was passed down from who to who. In all the other Masechtot, in all the other halachot, it doesn't mention it at all. So one explanation they say is because every society has their own moral codes, has their own idea of what is right and wrong. It can be social values. It's man-made. Men get together and they decide this is what you should do, this is what you should not do. And they have their own codes. Here he wanted to emphasize one point, that the moral codes that we get, that we have received, they come from Sinai. Not only are our legal laws or our other halachot that we get about tefillin and about mezuzah, all these things we get from the Torah, but also our ethical code that is also received from the Torah. That is one of the reasons that we have the whole Sefer Bereshit. And you open the Torah, he doesn't start, the first Rashi says that the Torah should start, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodeshim. It should start with the first mitzvot. The first mitzvah given in the Torah is to sanctify the new month. They were given that when they were in Egypt as slaves. So why didn't the Torah start at that point? Why did the Torah start from Bereshit and go through our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and continue until they went down to Egypt? So one of the reasons given is because
Excuse me, you mean the written Torah, the oral Torah?
the written Torah. The written Torah why did it start? The whole Sefer Bereshit.
Oh, why did
There are no mitzvot given in Sefer Bereshit. There are 3 mitzvot given in Sefer Bereshit.
As a book of law, it should start with law.
With
When
law.
telling us about Noah and Adam and Eve, start with law.
Right. So one answer is that that a major part of what we learn from our forefathers, from Abraham, from Yitzhak, and from Yaakov, from Noah, and from Adam Arishon, and the whole argument with his 2 sons, Cain and Hevel, and the fact that Cain murdered Hevel, is morality. The moral traditions that we get, we learn a lot of them from their forefathers. And that's what we have, the midot, that a person's character traits that he gets. The 3 character traits are known amongst the Jewish people. The Gemara tells us, Baishanim, that they are bashful, Rahmanim, merciful, Gamle Hasadim. I think that's the 3rd. They help others. So that is a trait amongst the Jewish people. How did we get it? We got it from our avot. We got it from our forefathers. So now that's why a lot of the Sefer Bereshit comes to tell us that. I mean, amongst other things, that is one of the reasons that it's given. So here he's coming to say that the moral laws that we get, they're not because we sit around and we decide what's moral and what's immoral. That is also possible. But a large part of what we get is because of what it was given over. Because we weren't just given dry laws. They were given dry laws to follow. You're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. We were given more than that. We were given a code which a person could follow in all of his walks of life, in all of his relationships. So even this is the one realm where it was important to stress that this also comes from Sinai. Okay.
Maimonides, who was not only a great Hacham, great philosopher, great doctor, he has a tremendous concept in Jewish law. He says, just like parents get married, man and woman get married, and they happen to both be redheads, they're going to have a redheaded child. They're going to transmit physical attributes to their offspring. Harambam believed, just like you transmit physical attributes, you transfer mental attributes. That means if a person has, you see sometimes they say in Arabic, hada mitl abu, his father was charitable, hada mitl abu. They see the son that gives charity. You can't give birth to a child to give charity. That's not a physical thing. Blue eyes and brown hair, tall, thin, chubby. Those things are physical. But Maimonides believed that you can transmit midot. That means if the father happened to be charitable, it's a good deed. If the father had rahmanut, he had mercy, he transmits that midah to his children. And the great thing, not only is the teaching, he felt, Maimonides believed, the genetically transmission of midot from father to son or from mother to daughter. It's a tremendous concept in Jewish law. In fact, when somebody in Jewish law was a non-believer, they call him in Hebrew apikoros, or kofer. Kofer means he denies the concept of shamayim, or denies the concept of prophecy or God. So Maimonides uses a terminology that says, Hu lo mizera Israel. He's not from the Jewish seed.
can't be.
So they ask a question, everybody. What do you mean? Why does he use the word seed? Say he's not Mikilal Yisrael. He's not from amongst the Jews. He's not from this. Why does he use that word zera in Hebrew means seed? Because Maimonides believes it can never be that our foreparents stood in Har Sinai, pure people, and they can transmit such a concept as non-belief in God. Can never be that this person is a Jew. Somewhere along the line that zera was lost. Even in Egypt, we used to say, the Hachamim tell us, when they left Egypt, the people that made the trouble were who? The Erev Rav. Who's the Erev Rav? The multitude, the mixture of the Goyim. Because we believe the Jewish nation is a pure nation. So if you have a man and a woman who are pure, and they have children, it can never be two pure people have something impure. It can never be. And it was a concept that Maimonides felt, and it's a very true concept.
Yeah, although I would say that, like they say about the forefathers, they say that it's like a lot of zeros. If you have your parents they have good character, or they have a lot of. It's like a lot of zeros. It says if you become something, you become an entity in itself. You become a one. So all these zeros, they become important. But if you yourself are a zero, so that you got from your parents is also zero. In other words, a person himself has to put effort into it. You can't just say, "Well, I come from a good stock, and therefore I don't have to try."
Somebody once asked, "Why is it so important to educate Jewish women?" Just educate the men. And that's a fallacy. Why?
Educate the kids.
That's it. There's a saying, you educate a man, you educate an individual. You educate a woman, you educate a family. That's true. Very true. Think about it. Come on. Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. First of the Pirkei Avot is Moses received from Mount Sinai. First, what's the most obvious question? What do you mean from Mount Sinai? Moshe Kibel Torah from Hashem. What do you mean from Sinai? That's question number one. Question number two there is Moshe Kibel Torah. If you look in the English, which is always incorrect anyway, every English interpretation of the Bible or anything else is never correct. Moses received the Torah at Mount Sinai. If you wanted to say at Mount Sinai, you would say Moshe Kibel Torah Besinai. But the Torah says, why? So there are many dirashot. Some Hachamim say Mem 40 because Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, so the Mem signifies how long he was up in heaven. I mean, nice dirashot. But I saw a nice interpretation. It says Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, from Sinai onwards, to make people understand that before Moshe there was no legal Torah. Legal meaning, there are people who say that Abot Kibiru Kol Torah, Kiyumu Kol Torah. It means Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov fulfilled the whole Torah. This is a nice dirasha to make people understand that the forefathers before Moses were obedient. And how do we know they were obedient? Very simple. Open the Bible. God tells Abraham, take your son Isaac and sacrifice him. He took him. So is there any question if he told him to put on tefillin, he's going to put on tefillin? He's taking his son born to him at the age of 100 years old, and at the word of God through prophecy, take your son to sacrifice. He took him. So is there any question he's going to eat kasher or keep Shabbat? So the Hachamim, there's one Hacham, Rabbi Abraham Cohen, has a sefer called Birkat Abraham. He says, you know what this means? It's understood. God gives reward to Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov as if they would have fulfilled the whole Torah, even though it wasn't given in their time. Because they were obedient.
They would have done it.
Of course they would have done it. So the Hachamim came along and they tell people that Abot, meaning the forefathers, even before the Torah was given, fulfilled the whole Torah. Now we know from a practical point of view, this cannot be so. Why not? I mean, did they eat Matzah 400 years before they left Egypt?
No reason.
No reason. Did they sit in the Sukkot 400 years before they went to the desert? No reason for it. So there were many things. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu married Isha Kushit. He married an Ethiopian. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest Jew in the world, is going to marry Yitro's daughter? Jethro's daughter? That's not acceptable. Yaakov Rabbeinu, Jacob, married Leah and Rahel. How can you marry two sisters? Today, it's a cardinal sin. If it would be such a thing today, it's death penalty. Yaakov Rabbeinu married two sisters? How can it be? So Harambam, as being pragmatic or bring a rationalist. It was very simple. There was no Torah. Yaakov married 2 sisters. The Torah was not given. You know, everybody knows the famous story when the Minhagim came to visit Abraham Avinu, said he gave them Zephyr and Leban. He gave them meat and milk. So everybody tells you, he gave them the dairy first, and then the meat. My mother says, what's the difference? Give them meat, the dairy. There was no Torah. Give them. You know, if you want to make it nice to people, you say, all right,
They don't want to scare people.
how do you get around the question? By telling people he gave them the dairy first and then served the meat. Very nice. But I mean, according to the simple interpretation, who said he gave them the milk first? Maybe they sat and had meat and milk together. How can it be? Abraham Avinu gave milk and meat together? So my Maimonides was a rationalist. The Torah wasn't given. We have a pasuk in the Torah which says, Torah sevalenu Moshe morasha kehillat Yaakov. The Torah was given by Moshe Rabbeinu. It doesn't say the Torah was given by Abraham. It doesn't say Torah was given by Yaakov. Now, that's observation number 1. The second observation is, Maimonides points out in one of his books that command the children. He never said to Isaac or Jacob. The first time in the Bible ever used the word to command is to who? Moshe. Daber el bnei Israel ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem sisit sa'avit bnei Israel ed korbani nachmi. Everything is al yedei Moshe Rabbeinu. So Maimonides believed that everything was given from Sinai, from the time of Sinai onwards, which was 3,301 years ago. The Hebrew year 2448 was the time that Moshe came down from Har Sinai. Prior to that, I didn't say that people were not pious, but it was a private thing. It wasn't a public thing. If a man was good, he was good. He had good midot tovot. It was a private relationship, say, between God and Noah, God and Abraham, God and Isaac. But when Moshe came, it became God and Israel, God and Am Yisrael, God and the public. Maimonides says there are 2, the word commandment. Who knows what commandments can be defined as in Hebrew? What's a commandment?
Telling somebody to do something.
He told Noah build a tevah. It's bizarre for me to build a tevah and put all the animals inside. Why not? He commanded Noah to do it.
That was a specific
Everybody. Stop that.
specific time. There was a reason for that.
So what? But it was a commandment.
That wasn't a commandment.
What was it? He commanded Abraham kill Isaac, sacrifice Isaac. Didn't he command Abraham to kill Isaac? Is it a mitzvah for a man to go sacrifice his son today? How do you distinguish between a mitzvah that it's binding on you, and one that's not binding on you? Harambam says 2 prerequisites, 2 conditions. A mitzvah has to be given to Am Yisrael, not to an individual. It has to be given to all of the Jews, not to one man. And it has to be li'ulamit, forever, not for a particular era. Berit Milah, according to Maimonides, was given by Moshe. It was given to Abraham as a private thing, but given to all of the Jewish nation from Moshe's time on. In other words, there was such a thing before Moshe's Milah, but it's not in the category of a mitzvah as it was when he gave it to Moses in Har Sinai. Then it was binding on all. Before that, it was binding on Abraham. When he gave it on Har Sinai, it was binding on every Jew. That's the difference.
Yitzchak had Brit Milah also, right?
Yes, but again, the Berit Milah that they had wasn't in the same category as it was after it was given by God to Moshe and Har Sinai. You have to understand there was a tremendous historical event that occurred. God told Moshe, these are the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, binding on all Jews forever. It wasn't something he gave to an individual in a certain generation to do. That's the distinction between a mitzvah and a non-mitzvah.
Wasn't a milah being done from Abraham on down?
Yes, I just said it was being done, but it was not in the category as we understand it.
Official.
Right, it was an unofficial mitzvah.
Well, it wasn't an obligation like it is today.
No, it wasn't an obligation like that. It said, for example, that mal velo para ki'ilu lo mal. That there were certain conditions that were done before Moshe that were part of the society of the time. It didn't become a mitzvah. In other words, if somebody did something now that was not in effect Jewish law, it became Jewish law when Moshe came from Har Sinai. That's the difference. It became an enactment. It became a Congress, for example, now decides to set some kind of judicial law, or the Supreme Court wants to make a law. They tell you as of September 27th, 1991, this law goes into effect. Now, before that, it's not a law. It's a theory. It's a theoretical law. Maybe people did practice it until then. But when does it take effect? New York wants to raise the taxes now to 9% sales tax. We're talking about 9% sales tax. Goes into effect 1992. Meanwhile, you pay 8.25%.
No, but that is, we see from that an important point, a point amongst in Jewish tradition, philosophy, that the whole reason that we do things today are not because of the traditions of the forefathers, but are only because of one fact. Because of the fact that we were at Har Sinai, and the fact that we had revelation at Har Sinai. Everything that we do today is because of that, according to Harambam. Not because it was a tradition beforehand or a tradition that came on afterwards. It's from that point where we all stood there and heard God's voice when He came out.
ומסרה ליהושע ויהושע לזקנים, זקנים לנביאים ונביאים מסרוها לאנשי כנסת גדולה. And of course you know that the Torah was handed down from generation to generation, but a very important factor here, it was handed down to the judicial system of that generation. In other words, they have the authority. Now, Torah wasn't handed down from one fellow to another fellow and he can give it to the next generation. It was given to Harambam. If you look in the introduction to Mishneh Torah, Harambam says it was given from the Bedin, the Jewish court of that generation, to the Jewish court of the next generation, so on and so forth. And if you look in the introduction to Maimonides, he tells you Moshe Rabbeinu Bedino, means him and the 70 Zekenim of the time, gave the Torah, the oral law and the written law, to Yehoshua Ubedino, and so on and so forth, to Pinihas Ubedino, to David Melech and Bedino, to Shlomo Melech and Bedino. So everybody asks, why every time he says excuse me?
Shlomo Melech was not a recipient.
He has it in the
No.
it
And,
says,
I think
That's the one. It's not Shlomo Melech was not
if you look in the open,
because of the Amonot that he made.
no, if
no,
you look in Harambam, bring Mishneh Torah, says Befirush, Shlomo Melech, Ubedino, he says.
the first class of Harambam.
And not only that,
We'll check it out. Don't
you
worry.
know, there's an interesting thing. They want to sometimes, you know how the rabbis want to emphasize something sometimes? You know, we have a law. If you want to cook on...
No,
Mishneh Torah. If you want to cook on Saturday, you want to cook on a holiday for Saturday. This 2 weeks ago was Shabbat. In order to cook for Friday, on Shabbat, you have to make a Hirub Tefshilim. You have to prepare food. So they say, Mitzvot Hirub Tefshilim, who established it? Shlomo Ubedino. Who established Hirub Tefshilim? Shlomo Ubedino established the law. It was a way for a woman or somebody to prepare food on Friday or Thursday for Shabbat. Because according to Jewish law, you can't cook on a holiday for another day. You can cook on a holiday for that day.
Tell me, the king of Israel, the guy is running armies and all kind of things.
Bedino.
What I'm saying is,
was
how
the leader.
much of it was he involved in that?
He
No,
was
but this is the point here, that the whole authority
given to a...
was given over. No, but the point is that the whole authority was given over to one group to decide, and everyone would abide by the laws that came out of it. And that's what kept the people together. The fact that it's not that the Torah, they only the Chachamim learned Torah. They didn't have schools until the end of the Second Temple. That's when they started to institute the idea of schools.
Teaching the public.
Until then, no, it was the obligation. How did they teach? If we would be living then, how would you teach? Your father would teach the son. The parents, the mother would teach the daughter. Everyone would teach their own children. If you didn't have a chan, if you didn't have a father, then you get from the Beit Din would have to take up.
To what extent do we know that they taught them? Did they teach them, like on a very heavy level, or was it...
that was dependent on the socio-economic state of the times. There are those, the Gemara talks about Chizkiyahu HaMelech, that in his days, he lived in the end of the Second Temple, that in his days he forced learning Torah on everybody. He said anyone who goes into the Beit HaMidrash to learn Torah, so he's going to live. The person who doesn't go to learn Torah, going to deal with him. He had a hard-fisted possible.
Chinese side.
There's a policy.
If you want to understand it clearly, even today, let's take American society to 20th century. Law in America is established by who? Not by Herman Wouk, not by Cecil B. DeMille, by the Supreme Court. The United States, who has the final word on abortion and all these major issues today? The Supreme Court of the United States. In Jewish law, we had the same thing. There was a Supreme Court. They made the law. They made She'akon Nehyeh B'dbaro. They made Hamosi Lehi Min Aris. They had the right to make a blessing. You have no. Today, can anybody in the 20th century invent a new beracha?
No.
Why? Why can't you invent a new beracha? They don't have the authority.
Yeah.
They're not a beit din. You have to be a judicial system. And this system, this court system was given by God to Moshe and passed on from generation to generation. That's why we have a saying in Hebrew, Yiftach beduro, kishmuel beduro. But it was referring to the beit din of that generation.
When did the Beit Din stop existing?
The truth of the matter is the beit din stopped when the Talmud was closed in the year 499, about 1500 years ago. When the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, about 300 years later when the Gemara closed, the official Beit Din was closed, and the Harambam calls it Beit Din Shel Rabbim. Beit Din Shel Rabbim means judicial court for everybody, for every Jew on the four corners of the earth. Public Beit Din.
1500
Means
years
they
ago, so?
499. So it means when they made a particular law that was binding on Jews no matter where they lived. In South America, New Zealand, Australia, America, binding.
Because they accepted it. Because the Jewish people
They had
accepted,
it, right.
accepted everything that was written there.
After 499, they have what we call today Beit Din Shel Yehidin, private Beit Din. I come from Halab, he comes from Germany, he comes from Russia, he comes from Egypt. Every particular area had its own judicial system. Today in America, you have the council, say, of Flatbush, of Brooklyn, of the Syrian community. But they became private Beit Dins. Means if the Syrian Rabbinical Council makes some kind of injunction or law, it's not binding on people living in California, or in Israel, or in Europe. It's binding on the people living in this community. Simple. But in those days, when the Beit Din made an enactment or law, it's binding on every. If they tell you when you eat bread you have to say Hanei Tilat Yadayim, it's binding on every Jew, no matter where he lived. That was the difference of a Beit Din.
If a rabbi in the community says this is the way this is supposed to be, then it's binding on everyone.
If he says Asili Charab, if you have a rabbi that you went to school, he taught you, and he's my rabbi, and he married me, and I was in yeshiva with him, and anytime I have a question I ask him, you're bound by his rulings. You can't go every day and find one rabbi and say, this is okay. This guy's going to tell me it's haram. I go find the other one, he'll tell me, okay, that's haram. You find one rabbi and you abide by his rulings, whether they're liberal or strict. One ruling.
I mean, that's a good social order is that way also. You can't have one group and people will pick and choose, who they're going to listen to and who they're not going to listen to. That is why the importance here is that we had an authority in one place. We had the Zekenim had the authority, and all the Jewish people accepted that authority. So now, that is why automatically, after the close of the time of the Talmud, so everyone accepted the Talmud and the Gemara as our tradition. So it was accepted by all of Israel, no matter where you
Universal.
live. So now, after the dispersion, we have people in Rome, we have people in Spain, we have people in India, you have people in Taiman, in Yemen. So now, each one, they lost contact with each other. So now, from then on, whatever's written down in the Gemara that we all knew about and we all accepted, so that is obligatory. That all of the Jewish people accepted upon themselves. That's what makes it such a beautiful thing, that after 1500 years you can come together and you have the same traditions, basically the same traditions.
Let's say somebody, I know, like for instance, waiting between milk and meat. There's all different times.
It wasn't established. It wasn't established by
Let's say somebody.
That is an important point. Why? I'll tell you. Comes a lot of the differences come amongst this example. This is one thing which is dependent on the interpretation of the Talmud. Everyone accepted the Talmud. The whole Jewish people in every place accepted the Talmud. Now, after a few hundred years, the tradition of the interpretation of the Talmud was up to question. So here you had different chachamim and different wise men and different dayanim, different judges in different places. So they interpreted differently. Their tradition was different amongst the interpretation of the Talmud. But here is an important point. It was an honest attempt to understand what the Talmud said. So here, if a person comes with an honestly to interpret the Talmud, so that is the people under them. There's the Beit Din of any one place. They interpret it that way. So that is the halakha for them. So here in Europe, let's say, or in Amsterdam, they interpreted this particular piece of Talmud to mean you don't have to wait 6 hours. Another place in Halab, you have to wait 6 hours. But it's both an honest attempt to interpret our tradition. So that they're both valid.
They weren't trying to change.
What is the different minhags actually formed? Was it 1,500 years ago, or was it?
It depends on every minhag. Every minhag has its own place. There are some minhagim which have no source. There are even some minhagim which Maran himself says shouldn't be done.
When do you think everything was always organized?
Minhagim always existed.
Always developing. It's always
From
developing.
the beginning of time, there were minhagim. The only difference was there was some minhagim that developed in the time of the Talmud, when this Supreme Court that we're talking about was in existence. That those minhagim were binding on everybody, accepted by all. But then after the destruction and after the closing of the Talmud, then the minhagim became a private minhag. You have certain minhagim that you learned from your parents or grandparents who came from Syria. You ask an Ashkenazi Jew, he tells you, when in Poland or Germany, we have a different custom. So the minhagim changed after the closing of the Talmud, but anything which was established prior to the closing of the Talmud became binding on all Jews. For example, I said it a few weeks ago in the class, the most obvious minhag is the 2-day holiday. Hanabam says minhag abotinu b'yadenu. Why in Israel they have one night to say that, outside of Israel 2 nights? It's a minhag. But this minhag was established by them. That's why we can't change it today. Today we have dates, we have phones, we have calendars. We know the right day today. Why do we keep 2 days holiday?
When I was in Israel, we also kept 2 days.
That's right, because
even when I was in Israel,
because your intention was to come back to New York. But if you had intention to make Aliyah and live in Israel, then you make it like an Israeli, one
I
night.
was with Chacham Ovadia Yosef. They made the holiday. I don't know if they made it.
No, he makes it 1 day.
1 day. We
One
made
day.
it
2 days.
Right.
Of course, the obvious thing is, if you're coming to visit Israel on a holiday time, Israel, it's a weekday.
That's my time. He doesn't have to do.
No, or put on tefillin and say, in Israel, it's the holiday finished.
You can eat hametz.
No,
In
not
private,
privately.
possibly you can.
Yeah, but not public. Publicly, you got to conduct yourself like it's a holiday.
Oh, but privately you can go in your room and you can turn.
Privately, they pray with tefillin while we're praying the holiday in the Knis. The last day of a holiday in America, it's a holiday. In Israel, they're working already. If an Israeli happens to be here, he has to put on his tefillin because that's a work day. So he can't come to the shul when everybody's making it a public holiday and put on his tefillin. So he does it in his home. Puts on his tefillin. He prays like a work day. He can't drive to shul. Say today, for me, it's Thursday. It's a weekday. He's got to walk to shul. He's got to conduct himself in the eyes of the public as if he's fulfilling the second day of holiday. Of course, because people don't notice anything. I saw the rabbi. I'm going to tell you a story. To this day, I can't get over. Listen to this. A fella tells me one day, until this day, I'm not going to believe it. One day, he says, I was in Deal. It was a holiday, and there was a rabbi that had to go back to Israel. And the taxi pulled up in front of the synagogue. He got into the taxi, went to the airport. I said, what? On the second day of holiday, he said, I was there. I was walking the shul. I saw it. I said, I cannot believe it. Impossible. Unless God forbid it was some kind of... Even in emergency, you don't put a taxi in front of the synagogue. People coming to shul, second day of a holiday, and the rabbi of Israel got into the cab and went to JFK. Now, I heard this from a very reliable person, but till this day I have my doubts. I said, your shul wasn't Cholam Wyatt? The holiday finished? No, I'm telling you, it was the second day of a holiday. So it goes to show you how you have to be careful.
What was Torah? They actually canonized it.
Excuse me?
Torah, don't they have the Ashkenazis have one version and we have another version?
No. the Torah, the 5 books of Moshe, absolutely the same from the beginning until the end.
There's a couple of
Maybe they write the Shin with a little different than us.
It might be one letter, 1 or 2 letters.
a couple of vowels or something.
Yeah, but that's the Torah. The 5 books of Moshe, as far as concerned by everybody, that's universal. No controversy on it.
Minhags are different between
Minhagim are different. Even laws are different sometimes. There are certain times amongst the European Jews, there might be strict in certain interpretations of law, where Sephardim might be liberal, or vice versa. Minhagim, you know how Ashkenazim feel about having kotniyot and rice on Pesach?
Yeah.
They think you're eating hametz. You know, you tell them it's Sephardic. First thing they tell you when you tell them you're Sephardic, they ask you eat rice on Pesach?
Yeah.
That's the first question they ask you. First thing they ask you eat rice on Passover? Yes, I eat rice on Passover. I had one time a fellow came to the store and he says to me, you speak Yiddish? I says, no. He says, you're not Jewish?
Well, that happened to me exactly.
They always say, you speak Yiddish? I says, no, I don't speak Yiddish. You're not Jewish? No, I am Jewish, but I don't speak Yiddish. You know, they sometimes can't fathom the idea that you speak Arabic, you speak Hebrew, you speak Latino. Not every Jew in the world has to speak Yiddish.
Yiddish is not a Jewish, that has nothing to do with the Jewish.
That's right. You're right. No, but there are people.
Like Spanish,
That's true. But there are people who think today, if you don't speak it, how can it be that you're Jewish? And you know, it's a contradiction.
It's like Hebrew.
Yeah.
That's true. I was walking in Israel, exact same story, and he wasn't religious. This Ashkenazi old man. He came over after the war, I think, and I was here, you know, with my beard and wearing my kippah on my head, and he told me, no, you're not Jewish. And I said, I was shocked when he told me that. Because he don't speak Yiddish. But that's, you see, this is also a misconception that we also get, that we get mixed up in. Because we interpret Judaism as what you see happening amongst you, around you. But it could be that our minhagim are different than other people's minhagim. But the minhagim are, again, a small amount of what we do.
Very small. Yeah.
They're very small. And all the things that makes a person Jewish, all of Jewish tradition, it's a very small thing.
But
And-
like even the way the Ashkenazim dress the men,
Yeah.
the black suits, all of them wear the black suits. It's not
That has
halakha.
nothing to do with religion whatsoever.
It's
Not all of
tradition.
them.
Yeah, not all of it. There's no connection to religion whatsoever.
Just
Most
the-
people don't see Jewish women not dressing like
They
that.
think if you don't wear a black suit, then
That's a very big mistake. That's
Middle
right.
What's
American
wrong?
people do that, but not regular. You know what I mean?
there are some people that it's a mental block. You know, we in the community call ourselves Syrian Jews.
This is right.
You never call yourself Sephardic. You very rarely use the word we're Sephardic Jews. You say we're Syrian Jews. In the Ashkenazi world, it's a mental block. How could you be Syrian and Jewish at the same time?
But when you go to Israel, when I
No, they
when
think
I
that.
used to go
It's
to
difficult.
One of my wife's friends, when she was giving birth in the doctor's office, you know, she's Italian. She thought, you know, Jewish and everything. Then she showed a picture. She thought, oh my God, he doesn't wear a hat and that face.
Yeah, they don't know. That's
No, but in Israel, people, when they heard that I went to yeshiva, they thought like I was the Rebbitzin.
yeah, they don't.
You know, they don't know the yeshivas here are different than the yeshivas there. Everybody has different interpretations.
הם אמרו שלושה דיברים, עבור מתונים בדין, והעמידו תלמידים הרבה ועשו סייג לתורה.
So they said 3 things. Now, whenever it's quoted that they said 3 things, it doesn't mean that they only said 3 things in their life. They said a lot of different things. However, these 3 things were the things that we remember them as stressing. They stressed 3 important things, which were important to their time. The first thing is havu mitunim badin. You should take care before you make a judgment. Now, generally, you should know that Masechet Avot not only does it deal with moral characteristics that everyone has to have, but the Masechet, this particular tractate, comes immediately after the tractate of Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin talks about the judgment, the judges, and the court system. So now, immediately after that, we deal with Avot, in order to tell us that the judges themselves, any system that we have in the world, any judicial system, is going to be dependent on the morality of the judges that you have within that system. There was one, I was reading an article about they have a bunch of corrupt judges here in the South. They said there's one judge who said he likes people who take dough. He said, why? Because then you know exactly where you stand with them. If they take money, so you know exactly where they stand. So now, if you have judges like that running your society, so then the whole society is going to be corrupt. You won't be able to live. You won't believe in the judicial system, and you'll take the law into your own hands. Like nowadays they have, in the subway, people, they saw him again. He says, "Yeah, I saw you yesterday. I'm going to shoot you." Why? Because if he doesn't shoot you, he knows he's going to. If he takes him to court, so maybe in a year, 6 months, he's going to get a year and a half. Then he's going to be out again. So he wants to take the hands his law into his own hands. So these three things that they said. Havu mitunin bedin. When you judge, let's talk about judges. When you judge, take care. Don't be too quick. Now this relates to us also. In our relationships with people, whenever you meet someone, or whenever you have into contact with anybody, no matter who it is, you automatically judge. First impressions. You make a judgment, and that lasts. So he says, this is also dependent on that. Havu mitunin bedin. Before you make a judgment value about anything that happened or any person you know, havu mitunin bedin. Don't be so quick to judge people. First of all, who are we to judge? You can't judge another person until you put it in his place. That's what they say. The Indians have a saying, don't judge another person until you walk a mile in his moccasins. That's what they say. If you haven't felt the person out, you're not going to be able to tell who he is, how did he grow up, what is his. So first thing is, havu mitunin bedin. Before you judge someone, take your time and take the full environment into perspective. Ve'emidu talmidim harbe. Have a lot of students. So what do you mean have a lot of? What does this mean? Have a lot of students? That the Torah is not meant for the elite. Torah is meant for the masses. Everybody has to be connected to the Torah. We say that Rabbi Hirsch said that a synagogue is not a church, and the rabbi is not a priest. This is why. What's the explanation? He says the Torah, in our tradition, everyone has to have their relationship with God. You can't have your own relationship to the priest. If you go through a priest, so you go through a holy man, so you're connected to the holy man, and the holy man has his spirituality. In Judaism, it's not like that. So they go to confessions, and that is their relationship to holiness is through their holy man. A rabbi is not like that. What is a rabbi? It's a teacher. You want to know what to do, so you go and ask someone who knows the halakha, so you go and ask them, what should I do under this circumstance? So you can use that. But your spirituality, every single person's spirituality and his connection to his Creator is only dependent on himself. Every person has to stand for himself. When he goes to heaven, you're going to go and you're going to they're not going to give you a lawyer to defend yourself. You have to defend your own self. Because the person has to build his own relationship. So, Ve'emidu talmidim harbe. Rabban Gamliel, in the end of the Second Temple, he had a different philosophy. His philosophy was, only if a person is pure of character, so then you can bring him into the Beit Midrash. If his inside, the Gemara says, if his inside was like his outside, so then you can let him into the Beit Midrash. In his days, they had a guard in front of the Beit Midrash, not letting everybody in. They have to check you. Who are you? Where do you come from? And then we'll let you in. There was a big revolt amongst the rabbis around him, and they took him out of being the Nasi. They deposed him because of Rabban Gamliel. They deposed him because this is one of the reasons that they deposed him also for a different reason. The way he was treating certain rabbis, he was very harsh with them. So they didn't like his philosophy, his methods, and also his philosophy in the Torah that is only for the elite. And they opened the Beit Midrash for everybody. So they said in that day, that one day that they changed over, they brought in thousands and thousands of new people in order to teach them. So we see that that this was also a bone of contention in the old days. Who exactly did the Torah and the tradition belong to?
How did they get, Rabbi Gamliel get up to that part to be an
They impeached him.
Huh?
They impeached
No,
him.
not saying that page, but how did he get up to that?
First of all, he was
power
a
that he had?
He was a great scholar.
He was a great scholar, and he came from a line of great scholars.
Lineage.
Rabbi Yehuda
He
Nasi.
had a lineage.
Yeah.
You know, it says, be deliberate in judgment, and they're referring to judges to be deliberate in judgment. Many Hachamim tell us that individual, non-judges, also have to be deliberate in judgment. Unfortunately, today, our, again, modern-day society, people, they jump the gun. They have a habit of always judging somebody. If they see somebody, first of all, classic example is they see somebody shopping or walking out of a store, right away they might suspect he's doing something wrong. Or they have, we have in the, famous American metal saying, you're innocent. What was that? No, that's not the right way to say it. Say it again.
Guilty until proven innocent.
No. Innocent unless proven guilty. When you say innocent until proven guilty, means he's going to be proven guilty. He's suspecting him already. People make this as a misusage. By the way, I read this in Dear Abby. About 6 months ago, I read it on the post.
We have to bring
I'm going to tell you what happened. One day, I was reading it. Somebody wrote an article and said, I would like to correct, everybody in America says you're innocent until proven guilty. I said, so what's the problem? I read the article. And she said, it should be unless proven guilty. And dear Abby said she's right. And the truth of the matter is she is right. Why? Because when you say unless proven guilty, because you could be proven innocent. But if you say guilty until, it means you're going to be. Anyway, in Jewish law we have what we call, we're not choshed b'kesherim. We never suspect people that are kasher. We always have a precondition. Everything is kosher until proven non-kosher. The mezuzah is kosher until you prove to me something's missing. The tefillin is kosher until you prove to me this is not kosher. This man and this woman, they kesherim. We say, Ko Yisrael, him kesherim. Didn't we say? We say all Jews are kasher. So there's no reason to always suspect somebody of doing something wrong. Always give people the benefit of the doubt, especially if they come from a religious community. They are known to be religious people, God-fearing people. They go to synagogue and they pray. Why should you suspect them of doing something wrong? They ask a question sometimes. You go to the Sefer Torah. Make a beracha on the Sefer. Why? Maybe they're going to find a missing word somewhere later on, 3 weeks later. Right now, it's kasher. It's kasher. Till we find the mistake in it. So again, it's the same thing. Be deliberate when you have judgment of people. Not only in judges, of other people. Always give them the benefit of the doubt. They have people today are very suspicious. One day I'm coming.
Somebody asked you what time it is to go.
I'm going to tell you. No, one fellow once. This incident, I don't want to tell you what synagogue it occurred in. Morris Benopla knows. A fellow abroad donated kak to a synagogue for Saudeh Shirishit. Somebody came right away. Where did you buy the kak? So the fellow came. What's the problem? We want to know what could be the problem with the kak. So now he embarrassed the individual. They didn't serve the kak. The man that brought the kak, Al Nishmat, his somebody relative, became very upset, left the shul. They caused a mahloket. All controversy in the synagogue because the fellow that was there wanted to know where the kak was bought. That's overdone a little bit. Why? Because you're creating... No, you're creating a bigger sin. First of all, you're embarrassing an individual. It's not that they're bringing in, basar meat, and then you have a problem. Who's the mashgiach? Unkosher kak? I don't know. Is there such a thing as unkosher kak?
Who eats it?
I never heard of... I heard of unkosher simsum, but I never heard of unkosher kak.
If the guy is open on Shabbat, then
But who makes this kak?
Who makes kak? This is what I'm telling you. When somebody... First of all, the person that brought it happens to be a religious man.
what if the guy was eating the ham sandwich?
No. That's nonsense.
Plastics made on Shabbat doesn't make it not kosher.
No, I'm saying it doesn't make it. I'm saying that's not the issue here. The issue is sometimes you create from something that has no basis to it.
There's no reason.
There's no reason to create this problem.
You know, they say sometimes, there was a very big rabbi one time, he was by my parents' house. My mother was telling him, look, everything, she kept the things in the boxes from here. So he said, please, he says, you know, it's a biggest sin if someone insults his host or something.
That's right.
Something
It's
like
embarrassing. You know,
that.
something.
Of
You
course,
know,
I
or I tell you, there happens to be, and this is a very common thing in the community. I must say
Yeah,
it.
it is, yeah.
People get invited to their parents' house, their grandparents' house. Their uncle. I'm talking about religious homes. I'm not talking about invited to people that mehalili Shabbat. I'm talking about religious homes. There's degrees of religion, and all of a sudden they sit down and only water, and then water's got to be in a plastic cup. They got no, the water in the glass is no good. They want a plastic cup, so it doesn't. You know, and what they do. A woman once came crying. She, I don't know what to do. My daughter would not eat in my home, and the woman happened to be a religious woman. Oh, what can I tell you? I said, look, you have to make your daughter understand. It's first of all, there's kabud avayim. Correct? Torah says you're obligated in respecting your parents. That's disrespect. Number one, that's disrespect. When somebody comes and there's another, I happen to know these cases of people mention it to me. I know a girl, a very religious girl in the community that's eaten by her parents, brings her own kelim with her.
Wow.
This is. First of all, let me tell you one thing. First of all, you should not go. That's number one. If you're going to go on these conditions, you should not go, because this is very embarrassing. And the father and mother, I happen to know them, religious people. They shomer Shabbat. They're broken-hearted. The girl got married to an Ashkenazi fellow from Borough Park, who's very, very religious. Obviously, he has a lot of influence on his wife, and she would not take milk for her child in her mother's house. It's on Halal Israel. The mother is willing to tear her hair out. This is a fact. No, I'm not making up a story. I know the people. Because the sister came to me, asked me one time, what can we do about my sister? I said, what can you do? But here's a girl that shows lack of respect for her mother and father. This girl cannot, in my eyes, be religious enough to do these things to her parents. Because she's breaking their heart. This is no mitzvah. Bring a plastic cup or bring the pencils with you or don't eat in her mother's house. This is, what I'm telling you is happening in the community, and it's a bad thing. It's not a good thing.
Somebody Ashkenaz is coming to your house to eat on Pesach. Are they allowed to eat? They're supposed to eat the rice.
They can use the kelim.
They're not allowed to eat the rice.
They can eat the rice, but they can. You can't say all the kelim mahanes because
They can eat at the same
because-
table with the same utensils.
They don't have to worry about it.
No. But they will, and they won't come to your house because they'll feel it's
Now,
funny.
yeah, you see,
Halakha is-
I'll tell you, yes, sir. I'll tell you, very, very simple one. If it happens to be that they're really not, I'll tell you exactly what. She said, what happens if it's the reverse case? When the parents are not really religious and they're not maybe kosher home, then how do the children conduct themselves? Is that what you're asking? Okay. You have to understand it. There are certain things that you have to concern yourself with, but there are certain things you must overlook. But that comes to an individual. You have to know. In other words, a person has to know the personality of an individual. Even if you're going to do something that was strict, you don't do it in such a fashion where you hurt their feelings. You don't make it so obvious, you understand? One time, my own case, my wife once invited some people to my house, and my wife happened to walk in the kitchen. She's looking at the tuna fish cans. She's reading the tuna fish cans. And my wife got upset. True story. What is she looking at tuna fish cans? What is she going to... She's religious. Her family is religious. And you're looking at the cans in the closet to see what's written on the can. What are you going to bring in? We bring in the tuna fish that has taref inside. That's not nice. Now, my wife was smarter, doesn't want to embarrass her, made out she didn't see her. Because if she saw her, she would embarrass her, and that's a big avon. So she walked away right away. One time I'm walking to synagogue on Saturday morning, it's a true story. I was crossing Quentin Road on Ocean Parkway. There's a fella, Syrian guy, in his car. Stopped at the red light, going to work. I pretended I didn't see him. Not to embarrass him. There's no mitzvah in seeing him that I'm walking to shul and he's driving to work. and his face will get red and will become embarrassed. He was embarrassed, or he even ducked his head a little bit. I pretended to look on the other side, and I crossed. Why should I embarrass him? That's no mitzvah to embarrass him. It's not nice. This is not the way religious people conduct themselves. You cannot hurt the feelings of other people. That's against the Torah. The Torah does not allow you to hurt feelings of anybody, especially parents. Her question is a person has to know how to. So you go, you have cereal, you have dairy, you have vegetables, you have fruit. That's the way you.
Like an example, the food was kosher and everything, but on Passover, she was missing a utensil, so I didn't even know that she stuck.
Even if they were missing a utensil, it would be no problem.
I didn't know, but I don't even want to.
Tell you a funny story. Once.
I ate the food and I felt guilty.
You shouldn't feel guilty.
No, but it depends.
And I knew I shouldn't eat it, but I have to eat it, otherwise it's not nice.
Because sometimes you have to weigh what you're doing against what you have to see what's the more severe. If I'm going to embarrass and hurt somebody's feelings, or I'm going to have something that the pot, I don't know if it was cooked, you give them the benefit of the doubt. As I told you, basically we believe people are good. One time I was in Florida and on a business trip, and I had to go see a doctor. He was a dermatologist. His name is Dr. Dugan. And he happened to be anti-Semitic. He lived in Palm Beach. So he's insisting, come and I want to make dinner for you. I was with my wife on vacation. I figured, I can't, it's not nice. Even a goy can't embarrass him. No one's going to embarrass anybody. So I said to him, no, I tell you the truth, I don't really eat out, I'm going to have something. All right, I tell him, I'm a vegetarian, I don't want to have any meat, so we'll make you fish. And I said, no, I don't like fish. I bring a lot. So I told him I don't like any fish. I don't know, one story led to another. She said, oh, you don't like meat, you don't like fish? We'll make you chicken. I said, no, I don't eat chicken. I'm getting crazy now on the telephone. I have to go see him. So I said, look, I can't come for dinner because it's very difficult. We'll come Sunday afternoon. I'll have some fruit. They came there. They had a bowl of fruit, watermelon, cantaloupe. They had some orange drinks. So we had some. I didn't embarrass anybody. They didn't embarrass me. Now what are you going to tell me? I'm using the fork to eat the watermelon that wasn't good, that they might have had the night before, lobsters with. You understand?
There is a difference. What she's saying is there is a difference with someone who knows the halakha.
I mean, I don't know if I would compare, like a person like you who's called a rabbi. He's an example.
But sometimes you have to use it. You have to use your head sometimes. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Right.
A person has to use common sense sometimes.
So most people don't use common sense.
They don't use it because of ignorance. We don't know. You know.
Right. You know where you can draw the line. Here, she doesn't know exactly the halakha.
You don't feel guilty.
Very often, a person might think, well, because of that, then maybe let me do things which are really isurim, which really you're not allowed to do.
So we don't know. Problem is that we don't know.
I'm allowed to use that book. You go to a non-kosher restaurant, eat a piece of fruit.
Yeah, and the fruit and the fish is okay, and then
but you have to.
the
truth of the matter is, you have to know where to draw the line, and you have to know how far it's going. If you can get away without touching it or eating with it, it's a different story. But I'm saying the main thing here, you have to understand, you're not permitted to hurt the feelings of people. The other day, somebody was talking about how important it was to get up when an elderly person walks by, or a rabbi. They all get up for them to show respect. So the law is, and a lot of people are not acquainted with it. The law is you're required to even get up for an elderly woman, which women walk by, elderly women, grandmothers, nobody gets up for them, which is not right. According to Jewish law, it's absolutely mitzvah. And secondly, I'm going to tell you something else. It's also required to get up for a goy that's elderly because of his age.
If you don't do it?
You're supposed to. There's a mitzvah in the Torah. Am I right or wrong, Rabbi? If an elderly goy comes, man, 85, 90 years old, is walking by, so what is it Torah teaching you? It's teaching you to give respect to you. It says
over 70, then he's considered to have chokhmah.
You have to understand, listen, God endowed that individual with long life. Obviously, only God knows that this man might have in his life did something to have longevity. And you have to give him this respect. So if an elderly man walks up, you can ask him. If somebody gets up and gives an older person on the train or a bus a seat, he thinks, you're doing a mitzvah. This is a mitzvah from the Torah. Absolutely. You get up and you respect the elders. people, they lack this
Well, the truth
commitment to
is,
that.
the Jewish religion teaches respect for the elders, whereas all the religions nowadays, they pray to youth and beauty, and this is all they worship, and the hell with the old
But
people.
the important thing is not only, as we say, that the person has to make rituals. Religion is, I said it many times, there are more than rituals that make a person religious. Compassion, feeling, trust, respect, obedience, tolerance to other people. It has to be. That is the Torah. You can't say that the Torah is only a few mitzvot, that the person does some rituals and everything else will be abandoned. These are more important.
Study all day in the yeshiva, whatever. But it comes to respect things like this, help respect, like you said, show respect for a person.
That's
or
right.
any conditions in it,
They have a tendency to hurt the person. You have to be very, very careful. But I'm talking in our particular community, a person, you can rest assured, there are people today, they are good people, and there's no reason to suspect them unless you know specifically. Unless you know for a fact that they're doing something wrong, it's a different situation. But otherwise, give them always the benefit of the doubt.
Dennis, which mitzvah is more important, Kaved Abayim or the kosher?
Because I know a case of somebody that won't eat by their parents.
Well, if the parents are really serving
No, but you said before, have fruit, this and that. You can't come to your mother invites you for dinner. You tell her, Ma, I don't want dinner because I don't have this. I only want fruit.
If the mother is really serving,
Which mitzvah is
I'm going to tell you, if the mother is really serving, God forbid, terifot, non-kosher, it's absolutely forbidden to eat.
How do you know?
No, I just said if you know she happened to go to a non-kosher butcher and buy non-kosher meat and she's serving it, absolutely forbidden by Jewish law.
You know that she's not religious 100%, you know.
Being non-religious,
Which mitzvah is more
I'm
important?
telling you, being non-religious doesn't mean she's serving terifot. I said if you know specifically that she's serving terifot, you're absolutely not permitted to eat it.
Suspected. There's a reason
Now,
why you have to
People
do it.
think that
That's not true,
That
but
is the problem, right?
that's the problem.
And you don't have to, but once you understand there's a difference.
Explain
Halav Yisrael, and days of the Gemara, the rabbi said that a person should not drink Halav Yisrael because of a chance that should not drink Halav of the Goy. Only Halav Yisrael. You should only drink Halav which a Jew saw or milked himself, because if you go to the farm and just buy it and ready in bottles, so you don't know where this farmer, he has a lot of different animals. He has a goat, he has a pig.
Milk comes from a pig or a camel.
Yeah, but he has a lot of pigs also. So it might be that he mixed it together. So therefore, you're not allowed. They said you're not allowed to have halav goy, halav akum. It's called. Only allowed halav Yisrael. In our communities throughout the generations, we only drank halav Yisrael. Now, nowadays, in our country, in America, and throughout Europe, United States, and all Western countries, it's against the law to mix in any other milk.
Against the government law.
It's against the government law. And you won't find any farm which will put into their milk. They'll put the milk of pigs or milk of other animals which are not cows. So because of the law, so they have to fulfill the law. They're not going to go against it. So because of that, we don't have an obligation now to drink only
on an issue like that, you don't go overboard. So you drink regular milk.
In France also.
Even if a person in his own home drinks halal Yisrael, when it's someone else, he drinks it.
Only if you go to a farm. Let's say if you go to a farm and buy it individually, so then you'd have a problem.
Not commercially.
Not commercially, right?
In other words, we're going now by the United States farming laws, agricultural laws.
That ensures that
Don't you need a hashgacha?
No.
In other words, the first thing somebody's going to say, well, there's no hashgacha. How do we know they don't use it? Maybe they're cheating. Why don't we...
The chance of them cheating...
Kosher butchers cheat.
The chance of them cheating against the...
You give them the benefit of the doubt.
They find out
afterwards.
3 years later that they were serving, it was done not kosher.
Yeah, but look, there are certain things that you just have no control over.